Welcome to The New Next, a podcast that addresses current events and how they will impact the future. Co-hosted by the inquisitive public speaking champion, Mike McVeigh, and energy, economics, and technology expert, Matt Jensen. Join us as we explore all things energy, economic, tech, and political, and how they will affect our future. And this is something that you and I have already, we know that we don't agree on this, and that's probably part of the thing. I think that there's limited wealth. You don't. And
there's not by theory, by law. It's called the money multiplier.
Okay. Well, I deal with reality.
That is reality.
I'm glad you think so.
It's a statistic the Federal Reserve tracks.
Okay.
Velocity money.
Well, I mean, I think as a world, like the planet Earth, I think there's a wealth cap. And I don't have
a wealth gap or
wealth cap. Now we can call it we can call it whatever we want, and this is we're gonna rip me apart and stuff. And I love you, Matt. But like even if we call it different values, where we say, oh, there's trillionaires now, but before there wasn't anything but billionaires, and back when a billionaire was like an unbelievable kind of concept, the percentage of where wealth lies is almost always still kind of like, even if there's 20 more billionaires this year than there were last year. I'm making up a statistic. I don't want that to be like thrown at me. Still, the wealth gap does keep on separating enough that percentages still show that the same amount of wealth is with the same amount of people.
More wealth is concentrated with wealthier people.
Right. So really, to me, it's a fake number. If you have $100 and I have $1, but next year you have $1,000 and I have $100, it's still the same thing, ratio wise. It's still the same thing, metric wise. It might be counted different, based on inflation or this or that, but the actual amount of wealth is still the same. And I know we can, and we've talked about this before about discovering new minerals or new things that change that dynamic. But even then, we're relying on something that ultimately the people that are going to be able to have the best opportunity are the ones who already have all the opportunity they need. That's my opinion. You can go rip me apart now. I love you.
Well, I think it's more like, I think most people have a wrong focus. So I think people are, and so I think the concentrated of wealth is not an issue, but the concentration of power based on the fact that you're wealthy is an issue. So, I think the perspective that people should really talk about it that's more meaningful rather than just talk about the nominal statistics is how have quality of life for average citizens, average people improved over time. Because if I'm like the poorest person in the world, but now I have better access to like fresh water and stuff like that than I did years ago, because Jeff Bezos is a lot more wealthy, his life hasn't changed that much, but my life has exponentially changed for the better. So there's this, basically, I'd say, let's see. So it's like, Adam Smith talked about the baker, the candlestick maker, and that sort of thing, that when basically one person produces goods and participates in commerce where trade occurs, then you're essentially creating money out of it, out of trading with other people. So as people participate in economies and provide goods and services that provide value, the economy grows. So I think, a lot of the issues with the economy in recent years was there's been a lot of stuff participating in the economy where they don't actually provide value. They just basically take a piece because there's information asymmetries in a market, or they're just kind of like taking a transaction sort of piece because they own access to something, so like that's kind of, you're talking about like the new money with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and stuff. That was one of the big hopes, is that in small or impoverished countries, you essentially give people access to a financial system where they didn't have one before, to trade and have kind of like this mechanisms of trade that stimulate local economies. So like I know, or at least I feel like the economy in the US is changing dramatically, but I'm super hopeful for the future, even though I know that these next couple of years will be total chaos. So it's I think that I disagree basically with your premise that money is limited. And I think the conversation, rather talking about money, if it discusses more productivity and people's like access to trade with each other, like if you compare someone that lives in the middle of Alaska where they're not around anybody and they don't have internet, to someone that does have satellite internet and power and stuff in Alaska, then that's essentially someone that has the ability to be an economic participant with anybody all over the world. So I just I think that there's like a lot of elements like technology, whether or not people want to participate in the economy. But when people are spending and trading with each other and that activity increases, then the economy grows. So the more people doing it, the more people engaging in goods and services. So like if you look at kind of the life cycle of economies, as economies move from third world countries and develop into first world countries, they start spending more money on like services and experiences rather than just bare necessities. I think a good comparison for that is what we saw in China. I'll use one specific market, the tourism market in general. From 1990 to now, if you've really looked at the global market of Chinese tourists traveling, as the personal income has become more concentrated in their country, but it's also become more spread out and developing kind of a middle class. You see a dramatic rise in Chinese tourists all over the world because they have more access to improve their quality of life. So, China is one of those countries that's really dealt with a lot of this wealth inequality, and they, being a communist country, Xi especially is really, I think, focused on leveling out the power between the rich and basically the government a little bit. So that was kind of one of the reasons Jack Ma is not central or front and center anymore. But so I think clearly I disagree with you, but I really do. Like, I don't know if it's a fixed mindset or a limited mindset, but I think a lot of the economy is based on psychology. And if people are out spending money and engaging in commerce, then typically the economy grows.
So, I mean, I guess we can do economy 101 then, because what in one sense, I have a great idea of what you're saying, and I think I understand the majority of it. But I also feel like there's a like when you say buying and exchanging in commerce and stuff. What distinguishes that from just everyday living anyway? Like, I don't. To me, we go to the store, we buy our goods. I go to, I I buy tickets to a movie or we stream a service or something. And the way you're talking makes it sound like you're talking about something separate from my everyday or my monthly activities that I do with my family. Is that incorrect?
So think about so we're talking about whether or not, I guess there's limits on wealth that can be shared with other people. So my interpretation of what you said is, or what you're talking about is kind of like there's only so much money, and it's a problem that rich people are too rich. And my perspective is that money is technically infinite. It just depends on how people are acting, how all these different actors are acting together in an economy, and on whether or not how that's distributed and how, different people benefit from it. So maybe here's an example. So say there's a very rural town, and everybody in the town basically spends half their day, every single day, walking with basically buckets down to the river to get water. And so there's 100 different homes that are all doing the same things, where 50% of the homes, 2 out of the 4 people, are there and they're basically picking up water. The other 2 people in the home are out working. And so those 2 people that are doing water, half their day is spent walking down and getting water, and the other half is spent doing domestic duties around the house. Mm-hmm. So some local entrepreneur has a great idea to pool some of their money together over time and save to buy a water truck. So now now only one person has a job to get the water for all the town, and 100 homes with 2 people in the home. So 200 people have 4 hours a day back where they can go do something else and potentially participate in the economy, where they can receive monetary consideration for that.
Okay.
So I think that's an example of, this guy started this water truck sort of thing, and he's going to make a lot of money because he's the one that's supplying all the water for everybody now.
Right.
But he's provides so much productivity enhancement to everybody in the village that everybody, even though they're paying for this service now, is far, far more wealthy off. And essentially they've grown the money supply.
So I would agree with most of what you're saying. Probably all of it, if I think about it more later. And maybe wealth is not the right term that I've used wealth, so I acknowledge that I might be using the wrong term. But I'm also saying specifically, I think money is limited. Wealth, especially when you're talking about the whole thing, I agree with what you're saying here. And I guess I need to establish the difference between money and wealth.
What's limited about money?
So the idea that you're giving the example is great until every other household's like, oh, hey, we could make more money if we buy a water truck. And so then everybody in this rural town goes and buys a water truck. And now, it hurts the or hurts their economy and stuff, because now there's not as much money for the water because now everybody's doing their own water truck.
Well, yeah, but so they would, as there's excess profits in a market, that incentivizes people to come in and participate in it. But in that scenario, 200 people still don't have to go get water every single day. And since there's going to be more competition in the market, they're going to be paying less as consumers.
Oh, no, I that part I don't have a problem with. I'm saying, though, is if everybody in that town of 200, every household goes and buys a water truck, then it's not sustainable that is now an industry that's going to work.
Yeah, but people would never do that. Why would they do that?
But this is so, and I know I'm doing two arguments at once, so I apologize. That's not fair to you. If you would like to learn more about the New Next podcast, find us at thenewnextpodcast.com, where you can suggest a topic you would like for us to cover. If you enjoyed what you heard, share the podcast, tell a friend about it, or rate us with 5 stars.